Right, Facebook Live with Claire Webster. Claire, thanks for being with us, talking about your caregiving journey and offering tips and advice during Caregiver Week. This is part 2 of 3 on our Caregiver series. We should be on air in about another minute or so. Hope you enjoy it.
Thanks for having me. Thanks, hi everyone. So Caregiving Week is all of this week.
Yeah, it's all of this week, so we figured one before.
Busy? Are you the things you're doing?
I'm doing so many things all the time, but I mean the big focus is really like we're going to be putting as much attention to promote these workshops at McGill, the faculty medicine.
Yeah.
And this had been one of my bucket lists years ago, saying when I had been on this journey, I said if I get through this journey, how am I going to end up teaching this stuff one day? And I'm going to teach at a great university
And look at you.
Look at this girl. The highest level of education is high school. It's like I'm teaching at McGill.
But life is often much more of a teacher, I think.
All right.
There's academic, all very nice, so you have the right combination because you have the professionals.
I have the professionals
who can give all that sort of the academic and the research-based information. And then, but if you don't have someone, it's like committees that don't have a person who's a user on their committee.
And see what you've been missing.
Here we go. Welcome back. Yes, Corey, we needed the song first by Train, Calling All Angels, and such an appropriate song as we welcome you back to Life Unrehearsed. My name is Matt Del Vecchio, specializing in free retirement home search and senior transition support.
And I'm Corey Serrata, clinical social worker and psychotherapist. I specialize in grief and loss. And I must say, I know why you jumped right in there, Matt, because we're so excited about this Caregiver and our guest today, because I'm loving this Caregiver series. I am certainly learning so much, and we are getting a lot of great feedback.
We really are, Corey. It is, for those who may not know, it's Caregiver Week in Quebec, so we decided to do a 3-part series. Last week we had our part 1 with Mark Stolo. With Huddle. Today we have an amazing guest, and part 3 will be next week as well. And we figured, the show's Life Unrehearsed, and there are a lot of caregivers out there. 1 out of every 4 Canadians are a direct caregiver, and you could imagine those numbers even multiply for extension of family and friends, and so it's such an important topic that touches a lot of us. So today on part 2 of our series, we've got, and I use this word inspirational because she really is, a Claire Webster. Claire is a certified Alzheimer's care consultant. She's the founder of Caregiver Crosswalk Inc., and she helps families navigate the journey of dementia through education and support. She also works in collaboration with the Faculty of Medicine at McGill University to teach dementia education workshops at the Steinbrück Center for Simulation and Interactive Learning. And you know what, Corey, you and I were there. We saw this incredible simulated apartment for those caregivers. It's special. And so Claire, welcome to Life Unrehearsed.
Thank you for having me.
For some people may know your story, many don't, and this is part of the reason why we wanted to get you on here. You have an amazing story. Can you bring us back to how your journey began?
Well, I guess it began, caregiving has always been a part of my life because I grew up an only child, watching my mother be a caregiver to my father my entire life, literally since the age of 5. My father was cognitively fine but suffered from multiple physical ailments. And as time went on, my life I really became a caregiver in November of 2004. I had just given birth to my 3rd child after having quite a difficult pregnancy. And literally a week after I had given birth to my daughter, my father suffered from congestive heart failure, was hospitalized, and he passed away 3 months after the birth of my daughter. And just a couple of years prior to his death, my father would start to tell me that there was something wrong with my mother, or odd personality changes. But I really discounted it as caregiver stress because, there was no memory issues really. It was just personality. And she was quite, she was really physically taking care of my dad. And anyways, after a year of really unexplainable behavior. I knew nothing about dementia. I decided it was time to take her to see someone. And I took her to a family doctor who suggested we see a neurologist who performed a mini mental. And in September of 2006, my mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. And it came as a complete shock. She had a significant change in personality. I had seen different behaviors, and I had, she had had a couple of mini car accidents, but I had never thought that all of those symptoms that I had seen, for example, hoarding things at home or an inability to manage her finances, could have ever, led to this. And she was young. My mother was only 74. So at the moment of diagnosis, very unfortunately, I was not given a prescription of care. That is, the doctor didn't tell me, okay, your mom has dementia, this is what you need to do, you need to become informed. And, my life was full. I represented the sandwich generation at the time. I was 38. My children were almost 2 years old, 4 years old, and 9-year-old. I was working full-time with my husband. Again, I have no siblings. And I thought I could do it all. I thought I could care for my mom as well as my children. And what happened over the next 5 years, we talk about life unrehearsed. Well, you have to expect the unexpected. My life became a cyclone of caregiving. So many things that could potentially go wrong when my mother went wrong. I was never approached by anyone, unfortunately, in the medical community asking if I needed help. I did not know how to navigate the medical system. The disease kept progressing. And finally, in July of 2011, after trying to keep all the balls in the air, I suffered a very severe nervous breakdown, which changed my life.
Well, thank you so much for your open and honest and blatant sharing of something that is so powerful. That was Claire Webster. She's a certified Alzheimer's care consultant, and we're talking on Life Unrehearsed about how to navigate the dementia journey, and Claire just began with her own. There's so much that you just shared, and what comes to mind is, I assume with all of that, there's lots of feelings when it comes to diagnosis and how you manage it. Can we talk a little bit about some of those feelings?
Yeah, I think what happens to many individuals, when you become a caregiver, in many cases, depending on the type of disease, you can literally become a caregiver overnight. And I call it kind of like that shock factor when your life suddenly changes. And the feelings that I had lived with for many years was absolute anger. Anger at how could this have happened to my mother? How could this have happened to me? Because when you're a caregiver, it's the impact of the person's disease doesn't only have an impact on the person who has the disease, but in my case, it had a huge impact on my life. It had a ripple effect on my family, on my children, on my husband, and I was in a state of constant anger. And I was also, I think a lot of the families that I work with, they go into states of what I call denial, because you just can't believe this is happening. I work with a population that they're in their early 70s. Their person has just recently retired, and you realize my life is never going to be the same again. How could this happen? And so, you're not accepting it. You're in denial. You're angry. Obviously, like I was talking to you earlier, with dementia, you're in a constant state of anticipatory mourning, because the disease lasts so long. You're constantly mourning different stages, and you don't know how to handle this. And that, for me, because I wasn't told at the time that I needed to seek support services, that I needed to become educated, I did not know where to put all these feelings.
Right.
So in my case, it came out in other ways. It came out, again, in anger towards my children, anger towards my husband. I was self-medicating, like too much wine, online shopping. Other people could turn to drugs.
Anything to numb and dull and suppress what it is you're really experiencing.
That's certified Alzheimer's care consultant Claire Webster, who's really helping families navigate their caregiving journey. So you've talked about sadness, a lot of emotions, the constant state of mourning, which I found quite interesting, anger. So what could you recommend to caregivers? You've been down this path. You're helping people right now. Any recommendations?
Yeah. Well, what I would recommend, from the first right away, is that no matter what disease you're dealing with, understand the disease, become educated on it. You need to be one step ahead. Okay, you need to understand what you're dealing with, and also to stay in a state of denial is not serving any purpose, because the longer you're having an inability to accept what's happening, it's really delaying the type of care that you're going to be able to provide your loved one with, as well as for yourself. So you really need to become educated. you need to seek out support services as soon as possible for no matter what, because you can't, there's no way that you can do this alone, whether it's individual support for yourself, group support, but it's very difficult to do this on your own. The other thing that I truly believe is that caregiving takes so much of our energy, and it's important to really choose the people, commitments, and projects that you surround yourself with. If there are people or projects that are not serving you, that are toxic, now is the time to just let them go. Surround yourself with positive energy, because our time is so limited. We're caring for a loved one. We're trying to care for children if we represent the sandwich generation. We have so many responsibilities. So if you sit on any type of committees, volunteering, if you're involved in any type of projects and you feel this is not making me feel good, it's not positive, when you're in the heart of caregiving years, you need to let go of it. And you need to set boundaries for yourself.
You know, we're going to come back with Claire Webster. It's approaching 4:45, and we're going to get a traffic update, Claire. But you mentioned support services. We're going to be talking about some of the challenges you faced with the public healthcare system. Let's first hear from Lauren at the CJD Traffic Center. Okay.
That's good.
Yeah. So
Yeah, we could talk
Now
about
you tackled about 3 of those 6 tips,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
In that.
yeah. Let's talk about navigating the healthcare system a
Right,
little bit.
which would be the teaser.
Yeah, and then how did I begin my journey of healing? Like what led me to become an Alzheimer care consultant? Like how did that happen? And then talking to the students at McGill a little bit, and then how it led to these workshops. That'll probably fill up all the.
Yeah, because we're going to have about 4 or 5, about 5 minutes or so.
Yeah.
The only question is, okay, navigating the healthcare system, which is good, and then we could expand a little bit on that, because
So
I
that's
think,
what I'm coming back with?
right,
Navigating.
and some of the challenges you face, and I guess because what you're going to say, people are going to be listening, say, okay, I'm in this boat,
Right.
it's not good enough. So I think we have to bring out what other support services are out there above and beyond the healthcare
So
system.
if I ask navigating the healthcare system, and you're going to talk about that, and then you can say, but, da-da-da-da,
Right. So,
to bring
you know,
out the
so-
next one.
So maybe you
Yeah.
could, here's a chance to promote AGI or Alzheimer's Society or other, even if it's not Alzheimer's, other support groups that are out there.
Yes.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Because you just can't rely on the public support
No.
system.
No, because it's really, there's a lot of, it's being very heavily burdened right now.
Okay, so we'll go with that.
And
Public
also
health
maybe,
system. I'll come back with other sources, and then you need to start, I guess, Corey, with
The-
leading into how you dealt with it yourself personally, which
Yeah.
will lead into the
Right.
the workshops.
Yeah.
Okay, fair.
Yeah, yeah.
And then at around 4:55 is when we're going to thank you.
Okay.
Okay, and then whatever you want to blast out.
Perfect.
Okay.
Are you going to mention the workshop?
Yeah.
Like a site for the workshop?
I will.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then we'll go in. That's going to be posted on Life Unrehearsed Facebook page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's 2 workshops coming up, one in English, one in
Okay.
French. And this is what we do.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. So at around 55. You were right, Corey. I want to jump in so badly to talk to you. With the music, we have musical interlude, right? And I jumped right. You didn't hear that probably. So they start the music.
No, he starts going, welcome. and
Yeah,
the
I go
music
welcome
comes on.
back, and the music came on simultaneously.
Yeah.
But the music's supposed to come on. I'm supposed to wait 10 or 12 seconds.
Stop, we get so excited.
Yeah, you can also say, like, a lot of people, caregivers feel they shouldn't have permission to have a life. They feel that, that
Right.
there's a lot of guilt.
Yeah.
That they
Yeah,
feel that
that's what we were talking about.
there's so much guilt, and they shouldn't, but they shouldn't feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we could
So,
talk-
yeah,
maybe we
you
could-
gotta
maybe we
Maybe I'll
could talk
try,
find a
about
way
that.
to squeeze that in.
I'll try and put that in there.
Maybe we should talk about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
What is the biggest challenges that caregivers face? Is that whole feeling of guilt.
Yeah.
We have to stop that. It's to be the best version. They want to be the best version for their loved one, but they have to take care of
So
themselves.
I'm gonna work that
Okay?
in, because I'll add that in, and then
Yes.
you'll be able to answer. So
Yeah.
how did you deal with it?
Yeah, feeling
I'm gonna
guilty.
mention, because I do a caregiver support group, and that's what I hear. Is
Yeah.
this tremendous guilt.
Yeah.
So
And then
coming back
talking
with the
about-
navigating, then you're gonna ask about other
resources, and then
then I'll
boom,
talk about the guilt.
the guilt,
And-
because that's
and
so
the guilt,
common.
And how did you
yeah.
do it?
Mhm.
How do you do it? How do you manage?
Yeah, we're going to have to. We got to cover a lot, but that feeling
We're
guilt
good.
we have to get to
Yeah.
for sure.
But we'll get in there.
So when I talk about the other resources, we'll just do a really quick, give a little plug to this.
You can even talk about Huddle, Alzheimer Group, Alzheimer Society, Huddle.
But we won't expand on it. We'll just boom, boom, boom,
Yeah.
and then right over to Corey for the feeling guilty. Good. You hear it all on Facebook Live. All the behind the scenes stuff.
That's it.
So Corey, you're coming back, right?
Yeah.
And there's music, Corey.
Yes, there's music. There's music, yeah. I use this song. Is it
Here we
you
go.
that suggested the song, the Ed Sheeran song? Welcome back. You're listening to Life Unrehearsed. I'm Corey Sirota with my co-host Matt Delvecchio, and we are talking about helping families navigate the journey of dementia through education and support with certified Alzheimer's care consultant Claire Webster. Speaking of navigating the system, that's what we sort of went out to our traffic update with. How do we do it? How does somebody do it?
Well, I mean, that's it. There's no manual for it, and I had no idea at the time, but how to navigate the healthcare system, because it really, you hope that it really starts in the doctor's office, that they provide you with some kind of like a roadmap when you leave. But what is important to know is that to access help, you need to call a social worker associated with the CLSC. That's the way to access public services. So whatever area or region you live in the city, you need to call your local CLSC. They all have home care divisions, and you want to ask for a social worker to come and meet with you. That's the only way to do it, because they have to come, they need to assess your situation, and then according to your needs, they will allocate a certain number of hours for you. However, you need to be proactive. So if you make the call and they don't return your call, you need to keep calling back. You can't just sit back and say, well, I called and they didn't call me back. You need to call. I mean, we know that the healthcare system right now is very, very, there's a lot of people that are demanding help. So people say to me, well, but I called them and they never call me back. You have to call back, and you have to insist, and you have to plead your case, and you have to say that I'm on the verge of a burnout, that I'm stressed, that this is having a toll on my health, it's having a toll on the quality of care that I'm able to not provide for my loved one. So be proactive.
Need to be absolutely relentless, and I think you bring up a good point, Claire, because I see that a lot in my world as well, transitioning seniors and a lot of the adult children saying getting nowhere. Well, you're right. Start with the CLSC. Be relentless. If you're vulnerable, it affects you. You might not have a dad or a mom that could help support as well. So they really give hours based on vulnerability. Even at that, Claire, as you know, it's never enough. So what can caregivers do above and beyond the CLSC?
Well, I think the only thing I want to mention, Matt, is really important, because I get this question all the time. People need to know too that the only way to access the long-term care facilities in Quebec, because there's a long-term care, as you know, and there's private, the only way to access that is through the CLSC. So they must get an assessment. You can't just decide one day that you're no longer able to care for your loved one and now you're going to have them placed. The only way to have placement is through the CLSC.
I would just add, because this is very much part of my world, Quebec is the only province that allows private CHSLDs as well. So if you want to go in the public system, absolutely through CLSC, but we're fortunate we do have a private option as well. Now, even at that, it doesn't work, or you're not getting your answers, where else?
I mean, there's some wonderful organizations. I mean, I specialize in dementia, so I mean, you have the Alzheimer's Society in Montreal, you have AGI, I believe the Cumming Center offers some good some very good services also. There's also some CLSCs that have, I think the one that René Cassin offers. So it's really to look Huddle that you had Mark Stoll.
Yeah, Mark Stoll is very good. Tons of community groups as well. Exactly. We had a segment, right, Corey, on community groups, Nova and Contactivity, and so they're out there. You just got to do your search.
Yeah. But, and especially now, I have to say, because I'm so involved with the Faculty of Medicine at McGill, I mean, we are offering amazing dementia education workshops for family caregivers at the Steinberg Center for Simulation. So that's
so that we know, and we want to hear more about that.
Absolutely.
You mentioned Cumming Center. I myself facilitate a support group for caregivers, and I know the number one sentiment expressed is guilt. How do you handle that?
Oh, well, I did not handle it very well, and it was all consuming. And I think what caregivers need to understand is that they have permission to have a life. And feeling guilty is always, I'm the only one that could care for my loved one. Nobody could do it better than me. If you continue to live within that belief system, you will burn out. So you you have permission to have a life, and the more you invest in yourself and the better care that you will invest towards yourself, you will be a better caregiver for your loved one. But the guilt was so all consuming for me that it was part of the reason that I suffered a burnout. I just felt that I wasn't a good enough daughter, I wasn't a good enough mother, I wasn't a good enough wife, I wasn't a good enough friend, and it served no purpose. It didn't. All it did serve was it harmed me in the end.
It was negativity, and in fact, it probably fed each other,
Right.
and you almost probably felt guilty about feeling guilty, so
Yes.
you don't want to
Yes.
get out of that
It is a
bubble.
vicious circle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly.
it is a vicious circle. Claire, there's a lot of things that I know you want to talk about here. We're running out of time, but please tell us a little bit more about these workshops, these amazing workshops
Right.
you're working with.
So I have the great privilege of working with the Faculty of Medicine, and we and this was kind of born out of my, like what your previous guest said, I have this idea, and how am I going to change the healthcare system? So why not? Let's work with one of the best medical schools in the world. So we've had a few of them. Our next workshop we have one on November 30th and one on January 11th. And what makes them unique is I facilitate them with some of the best geriatricians that we have in our city. Then the next two workshops, one will be in English, one will be in French. I will be working with Dr. Serge Gauthier, and he is the director for the McGill Center for Studies on Aging. And what we do is he talks about all the medical aspects of the disease, how it's going to progress. I share my story as a caregiver, very vulnerable, and then we bring people into the simulation apartment. We actually have actors that are portraying what it's like to live with dementia. We teach people how to keep their loved ones safe at home, and then we do a whole segment on how to prevent yourself from getting a caregiver, from burning out as a caregiver.
And we're going to post that workshop on our Facebook Life Unrehearsed page, Claire. Now, to reach you personally, Claire, if they want to get interested in consulting on Alzheimer's.
Right. So to reach me, 514-826-9968 or www.carecrosswalk.com. And on my website, you can also find under workshops all the information about the McGill program.
Thank you so much, Claire.
Thanks so much, Claire. Really appreciate you coming on and sharing with us your story. Join us next week on Life Unrehearsed. It's November 11th, which is Remembrance Day, and what better way to acknowledge that than to talk with Guy Lavriere, who was actively overseas during the Cold War.
Yeah, it's going to be quite interesting for Remembrance Day. We're also going to wrap up our 3-part caregiving series with family caregiver expert Stephanie Erickson, who will offer some valuable information about how to care for your loved one. That's next Sunday at 4 p.m., where you can catch us on Life Unrehearsed every Sunday at 4.
Is that okay? We weren't that bad.
Yeah. No, it's good. 4:57.
So
And
fast.
Yeah, it's so fast. So fast.
Well, we're going to say
Always do
a
that.
goodbye and a thank you to Claire.
Thank you.
All right.
Call me. Come to my McGill workshops, please.